Hello, my name is Cheo, also known as Jose, and I welcome you to another edition of Clandestino Radio. Mental health has always been one of the issues of my concerns because I've dealt with anxiety, depression, drug addiction, and so on. And so I thought it was a good opportunity to talk about it. And being that it's Pride Month, I decided to talk to a local artist that I met last year.
Their name is
Rokaturas. They recently published a book for youth dedicated to raising mental health awareness. This is Rocky Casillas Aguirre.
As an immigrant, and a person of color being here, I'm also part of the LGBTQ community, so I'm a transgender artist. We tend to face a lot of struggles in our day-to-day that are very different than many other people's. And so that just really compounds the impact on our health. So for me, as a millennial too, I'm part of a generation that has had to face a lot of things just generationally with always hearing about climate change and the state of our environment, and then the economy, and then COVID and discrimination and violence against people of color or trans people. So it's almost like all you hear around you is bad news. And I stopped watching the news just several years ago because it was too much. So even to this day, it's been like 2 or 3 years that I've chosen not to consume media because of how much it affects me and my mental health.
What are your goals even with your new series that's coming out?
Yeah, well, we just talked about how I have my own mental health struggles with anxiety in particular, which started during the pandemic. And during that time, I realized that I wasn't the only one that was facing anxiety. It's something that is really prevalent in upcoming generations. Like millennials and Gen Z face a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, PTSD, suicidal thoughts, things like that. And fortunately, they are the generations that are also the most likely to seek help. So it's really good to when I was going to a psychologist, like it was good and bad to see other young people there too. It was good that they were there seeking help, but it was also eye-opening to see that it's become such a common thing. And even like younger kids who never showed symptoms of anxiety before the pandemic now are expressing it in really really sad ways. And part of it is from isolation, quarantining during like doing distant learning, and like it's being in the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, it's been like a whole different world. And there have been good things that have come out of it, as well as unfortunate things like anxiety having increased in youth. And so the ways that I hope to help kids through my art and through my stories is by just giving them the vocabulary of mental health, just giving them a resource that helps them talk to their parents more about the ways that they're feeling, creating safe spaces to talk about mental health, because I truly believe that the only way that we're going to heal together is by openly talking about it. Like society often tells us, you don't have a panic attack in public, keep that to yourself, keep your mental health issues at home. And there's just no encouragement of talking amongst ourselves. That's something that we've had to do on our own because it's the way that we find help. And in talking, you realize that you're not alone, like you're not the only one. You realize how common it is. And I did mention the series that I'm working on, but I also did recently just publish a book called Where Did Anxiety Go? And it's a children's book. So it's for kids ages 3 to 8. And it's a 30-page rhyming book that teaches kids how to recognize the symptoms of anxiety and tips on like what works and what doesn't work when anxiety visits you. So it talks about anxiety in a way that many other children's books haven't, in that anxiety is not defined as an internal thing, but rather a visitor that comes to you. And I feel like, at least for me, that has been a really helpful way to process anxiety, and like seeing it as not something that identifies who I am, but rather something that we experience as humans.
And where can people find your book?
I self-published it, so it's on Amazon, and it's in Spanish and English. So it's Where Did Anxiety Go? Or and the Spanish title is ¿A dónde se fue la ansiedad? I also worked with 2 other people from my community who helped translate the book into Swahili and Somali. So unfortunately, Amazon doesn't publish in those languages, so I'll have to find a different print company for the Somali and Swahili, but it'll ultimately be printed in 4 languages. And I chose those languages because it's representative of the people who live here in my community in the Northfield Faribault area. And I wanted the book to be as accessible as possible. There are a lot of kids here, immigrants from Kenya and Somalia, who don't speak English. And so having a book in their own language, I thought would be a really cool way to engage them, because we don't have a lot of Somali or Swahili books at libraries or at bookstores. So for me, it was important that it would be translated. Otherwise, I feel like it would have been a disservice to my community if I didn't offer it in all of those languages.
Culturally, traditionally,
Mhm.
mental health is not something that we talk about. It's not something that our culture is proud to say that we take care of.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't had a lot of friends who said, "Oh, I gotta go see my therapist" or something.
Mhm.
So, what's your take on that mental health issue from the cultural perspective?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because it for me, it has felt like this taboo thing. And coming from a Mexican family and having lived in Mexico for during my youth, and even coming here, it's not something that is readily talked about. I didn't grow up talking about mental health when I was a kid, and I know that a lot of other Hispanics weren't either. And when I've asked my mom, she wasn't raised in a household where they talked about mental health. So it's been like a generational thing. Um, we can't really blame our parents or grandparents for not having talked about mental health at home, because it's been just historically a taboo, or something that people don't talk about because of the mental health stigma. People are afraid of saying that there's anything wrong with them. And not that being anxious, that experiencing anxiety or experiencing depression means that there's anything wrong with you, but that is what people think that others will think of them. You know, like um, if you share that you have anxiety or that you have suicidal thoughts or something like that, the person who's experiencing that oftentimes assumes that others will think that they're like quote unquote crazy, and that's part of the mental health stigma. Is people might be in our community experiencing these things, but they don't reach out for help because of the way that they think people will look at them. And that's part of why I'm trying to create these resources that I never had when I was a kid. Because I think that it's important that we talk about these things. And I think that over time, more and more people will talk about it just across cultures and across generations. I think that we are moving in that direction. And now, you know, as an adult, I've been talking to my mom about mental health and to my grandma. So I think that my openness has also allowed for openness on their end. And I think that that's a trend that can continue. It's just a matter of being brave enough to open that door with your family and saying like, hey, it's okay to talk about these things, even though you didn't when I was younger or when you were a kid. Um, One of the songs that I listened to recently when I went to Mexico is a song by Andrea Bocelli called Vivo por ella. And it's a song that just has a lot of power to it in the way that he's singing it, because he's singing about music and how music is a part of him and how he can't live without music. And I think it's really beautiful when you can connect um, to your art in that way, whether it's drawing or music or dance, like any kind of form of creative expression is kind of like where your soul lives, and you can hear it in that song what music means to him. So I would recommend that song.
Where can people find you, and are you open to commissioned art, or what else do you do?
Yeah, no, I'm open to commissions. I've done a lot of branding for other small businesses or nonprofits. That's something that I really enjoy as well, other than my personal projects like those books. Um, I'm really active on Instagram. So I have two Instagram handles. One is Rokaturas, which is the like my commissioning, like branding design branch. And then like my stories that are for youth, those are on Twitch and Weenie. So those are the two characters that are the main characters in all of my stories.
Yeah, and one of them is a flame, is that right?
Yeah, yeah,
And the other one is a hot dog.
right. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
like those a lot because they also go through the vocabulary for mental health, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, and yeah, Twitch is a flame, and he represents that spark that is in all of us, like that curious kid that is within us. And to me, that's like the innocence that's part of every human being. So when you can connect to that inner child, um, I think that when we get there, we'll be much happier, because kids are very curious, and they're when they go out into the world, everything is amazing and inspiring and magical. And as adults, I think we forget to see the world in that way. So we have this little kid locked up inside that's waiting for us to let back out. So that's part of the message of Twitch, of this flame, is to encourage people to reconnect to that inner kid that lives in them.
That's awesome. Thank you for
Thanks.
sharing. Anything else you would like to share with our audience?
Just that everyone take care of themselves. And like I mentioned, take the time to get to know who you are. It's we're not here for very long, on this planet. So the more that we can learn about ourselves, the better, because we'll be happier and healthier, and we'll be able to help others do the same. Muchas gracias, José. Bendiciones y buenas vibras a todos.
Listo. This is Clandestino. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and like our content. See you next week.